Ankles. Hands down, the most difficult area to make progress in. We're talking months for millimeters of gains. But before we get after how to finally make improvements in your ankles, let's take a look at what muscles we're addressing and why this often gets screwed up. With regards to improving the ankles, the main direction we're looking to improve is dorsiflexion. So think the knees going over the toes. With this range of motion, we're specifically going to be feeling a stretch in the Achilles and the calves, so the back of the ankles. There's also the possibility we're going to feel a stretch in the front of the ankle at the ankle joint. We also want to work the tibialis anterior. This is the muscle in the front of our shin that pulls our toes towards our shin, and it's the main muscle involved in actually performing ankle dorsiflexion. So keep this in mind, guys. This is a super core concept. We want to improve both sides of the joints, and this concept is going to apply to working any joint. So in terms of the ankle, we're going to work the back side of it, so the Achilles and the calves, and the front side of it, in this case the tibialis anterior. As you can see from the side angle here, a common compensation is when we lack ankle dorsiflexion to either overextend the spine or hinge at the waist, as opposed to having the ability to have the knees track over the toes. Improving our ankle dorsiflexion can have tremendous benefits on our back squat and front squat because the more the knees can track over the toes, the more we can get our quads involved. If we look at this particular study here comparing the deep squat to the partial squat, it found a bunch of really cool things. One in particular is that the deep squat is superior to increasing the front thigh muscles, or the quads, in comparison to the partial squat. Keep in mind, we can only squat deep if we have the required range of motion. Alright, so the first movement we're going to look at in improving our ankle dorsiflexion is going to be the fisherman stretch. If we're going to be working the right ankle, I'm going to want to be sitting on the left foot. We'll cover why this is important in a moment. To begin the stretch, we want to drive our knees forward, pushing them over our toes. We want to avoid the knee collapsing inward. Likewise, we don't want the knee going excessively outward as well. We want the knees going somewhere over the smaller toes. Now that we know the actual direction we're stretching in, let's go over the cues that I like to utilize while holding this stretch. As I'm leaning into this stretch, I really like to have the wall in front of me just simply as an objective marker. Once I'm leaning forward and my knees almost touching the wall, I like to think about actively pulling my toes towards my shin or using that tibialis anterior muscle to drive my knee more forward. At the same time, I'm also thinking about keeping that heel down so I can facilitate a calf and Achilles stretch. I would say the most common error is going to be extending too much at the hip, taking away from the ankle dorsiflexion. The more that we extend the spine or the hips, the less we're going to be utilizing ankle dorsiflexion. Just like we covered earlier, if we lack ankle dorsiflexion in the squat, we have to use an overextension strategy to make up for the range. The same applies here. One thing I've found with the clients and patients I work with is they find it extremely uncomfortable to sit on that non-stretching leg foot. One possible solution is to put a pad between your leg and your glute to reduce the range of motion and provide a little extra support. We now need to talk about strengthening the front side of the ankle or that tibialis anterior muscle. In a perfect world, you'd have access to a tib bar or a tibialis raise machine. But fortunately for you, I don't either. So let's go over my top 2 solutions that I like to use with patients and in clients to address this range of motion. Our first option is going to be working each foot individually, utilizing a dumbbell and, in our case, a gymnastics ring strap. Go ahead and set yourself up on a bench. The non-working foot's going to be on the floor supporting yourself. The working leg is going to be straight on a bench with your ankle hanging off of the bench. You're going to want to take the muscle through the full range of motion. So to begin, you want to plantar flex your foot or point your toes as hard as you can, and then think about pulling your toes towards your shin, getting them as far up as you can. Option number 2 is if you don't want to go to the trouble of anchoring a strap to a dumbbell on your foot, you can simply utilize a wall. With this wall setup, we're going to be doing both tibialis anterior muscles simultaneously. You want to set yourself up against the wall with the knees locked out. You want to shift the weight into your heels as much as possible. To initiate the rep, think about pulling your toes as much as you can towards your shins. The further you walk your feet away from the wall, the more difficult the movement becomes. Likewise, if you need to scale the movement back, walk the feet closer to the wall. The most common error we're going to see with both of these variations of the tibialis raise is not completely isolating the tibialis anterior muscle and compensating, most likely utilizing the quad to assist in the motion of pulling the toes towards the shins. That's all I got on ankle mobility. I'd say it's critical if you want to have a good and strong looking squat and not looking like my dog going to the bathroom. Leave that thumbs up if you liked the video, subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos, and I'll do this again next week.